Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 24 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6. And today we're going to start chapter 14, which is titled King Chitraketu's Lamentation. And yeah, it'll take a couple of days actually to do this, I would expect. But first of all, anyway, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Yes, so, Canto 6, Chapter 14, King Chitraketu's Lamentation. Let us read a short excerpt from Prabhupada's chapter summary. In this 14th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj asks his spiritual master Shukadev Goswami how such a demon as Vritrasura could become an exalted devotee. In this connection, the previous life of Vritrasura is discussed. This involves the story of Chitraketu and how he was victimized by lamentation because of the death of his son. In other words, Vritrasura in his previous life was King Chitraketu. Right, so there are 61 verses in this chapter. We've divided them into 9 sections. Okay, so here we go, devotees. 9 sections as follows. First section, verse 1 to verse 7. Maharaj Parikshit questions Shukadev Goswami how a demon like Vritrasura could become a great devotee. And section 2, verse 8 to verse 13. Shukadev starts telling the story of King Chitraketu. Third section, verse 14 to verse 21, Angira Muni visits Chitraketu. Fourth section, verse 22 to verse 26, Chitraketu asks Angira for help to have a son. Fifth section, verse 27 to verse 29, the sacrifice of Angira Muni. Sixth section, verse 30 to verse 36, Chitraketu's first wife, Kritadyuti, gives birth to a son. Seventh section, verse 37 to verse 43, the co-wives become consumed with envy and kill the son. Section 8, verse 44 to verse 60, Chitraketu's reaction to the child's death. And finally, the 9th section is just verse 61 on its own. Angira Muni returns. Right. Okay, so let's get into it. First section, Maharaj Parikshit questions Shukadev Goswami how a great devotee, how a demon like Vritrasura could become a great devotee. It's verse 1 to verse 7, and of course it's an extremely good and extremely important question, actually. Oh yeah, very important question. Right, so let us read through the verses. Let's read through the verses. Verse 1. King Parikshit inquired from Shukadev Goswami, O learned Brahman, demons are generally sinful, being obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vritrasura have attained such exalted love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan? Verse 2. Demigods situated in the mode of goodness and great saints cleansed of the dirt of material enjoyment hardly ever render pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Mukunda. Then in brackets, therefore, how could Vritrasura have become such a great devotee? Verse 3. In this material world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them, few are interested in following religious principles. Verse 4. O best of the Brahmins, Shukadev Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one may actually achieve liberation, giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife and children. And among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. Verse 5. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. And verse 6. Oh, there's a big purport there. Verse 6. Vritrasura was situated in the blazing fire of battle and was an infamous, sinful demon, always engaged in giving troubles and anxieties to others. How could such a demon become so greatly Krishna conscious? My dear Lord, Shukadev Goswami, although Vritrasura was a sinful demon, he showed the prowess of a most exalted Kshatriya and satisfied Lord Indra in battle. How could such a demon be a great devotee of Lord Krishna? These contradictions have caused me great doubt, and they have made me eager to hear of this from you. Section 1. Maharaj Parikshit questions Shukadev Goswami how a demon like Vritrasura could become a great devotee. Verse 1 to verse 7. Verse 1. King Parikshit inquired from Shukadev Goswami, O learned Brahman, demons are generally sinful, being obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vritrasura have attained such exalted love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan? Yes, so devotees, there is a short purport here to this first verse. Prabhupada makes the point, first of all, that here in this material world, it's not just the demons who are obsessed by passion and ignorance, but basically everyone. I mean, the materialistic people, they're all possessed by modes of passion and ignorance, and you can't become a pure devotee unless you conquer these modes, and at the very least come to goodness. And Lord Krishna confirms this in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 verse 28. Yesham twantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. persons who've acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. That's a real classic verse, which has appeared numerous times just in this canto, let alone the whole Bhagavatam. So verse 2, demigods situated in the mode of goodness and great saints cleansed of the dirt of material enjoyment hardly ever render pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Mukunda, in brackets. Therefore, how could Vritrasura have become such a great devotee? Verse 3, in this material world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them, few are interested in following religious principles. Verse 4, O best of the Brahmins, Shukadev Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one may actually achieve liberation, giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife, and children. And among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. Yes, okay, so there's a purport here. There are four classes of men: karmis, jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. This statement pertains to karmis and jnanis. Of course, the jnanis trying hard to enjoy the material world, changing bodies to get better comfort here or on another planet. And when this person becomes a jnani, then he wants liberation from Maya. And among many such jnanis, only one may actually become liberated, because it's not so easy. You don't just become a jnani and become liberated, like you eat a meal and you become satisfied, just sort of a normal sequence of events. No, it's a real challenge. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, such a person gives up his attachment for society, friendship, love, country, family, wife, and children. Among many such persons who are in the vanaprastha stage, one may understand the value of becoming a sannyasi, completely accepting the renounced order of life. Verse 5, O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. So these last, I think, 3 verses, has it been? Is it 3? Let me check. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 verses. Verse 3, verse 4, and verse 5 here. They are sort of elaborations on Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, verse 3. Manusyanam Sahasreshu. You can look that up if you want. But that's a very famous verse from Bhagavad Gita, which encapsulates briefly what these 3 verses, 3, 4, and 5, are saying. So there's a purport here. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following purport, Prabhupada says, to this verse, that simply desiring mukti is not enough. You have to become liberated. That when one understands the futility of material life, one becomes advanced in knowledge. Then one can become situated as a vanaprastha detached from the family, etc. But then one should become a sannyasi and not fall down. So, of course, although many may take sannyas, and quite a few do, many of them become again attached to women, etc., material life. So, second paragraph, the jnanis, yogis, and karamis who are not devotees are offenders. Lord Chaitanya says, Mayavadi Krishna aparadi. One who thinks everything is Maya, instead of thinking everything is Krishna, or Krishna's energy, is an aparadi. But still, although the Mayavadis are offenders, still they can be counted amongst the siddhas who have a type of perfection of having realized the self. So they're considered closer to spiritual perfection, as they have some idea, they've realized what is spiritual life. But then if such a person becomes Narayana, Parayana, a devotee, he is better than Jivan Mukta, a liberated person like an impersonalist, because this requires higher intelligence. So then, and there's a third paragraph, there are two types of jnanis. One has some inclination to devotional service, the other is inclined to impersonal realization. The impersonalists work hard for no grain. Prabhupada says, like trying to husk paddy, rice, that has no grain left. Rice, of course, comes in with a covering over it, you can say. And it's the seed within. So then you put it through a machine, it removes the covering, and you just get the grain. So later, though, if you take all the coverings, like the shells, over the individual grains of rice, and you put them through the machine again, it's just a waste of time. So anyway, the other class of jnani, who's inclined towards devotional service, there's also two kinds of them. And Prabhupada says, those who are devoted to the so-called false form of the Supreme Lord, and then those who understand the Supreme Lord as Satchitananda Vigraha, as per Brahma Samhita verse 1, as having an actual spiritual form. So the Mayavadi devotees, or the Mayavadis, worship the Lord with the idea that he has taken the form of Maya. So therefore the ultimate truth is impersonal. But the pure devotee never thinks that Lord Vishnu has accepted a body of Maya. He knows the absolute truth is the Supreme Person. So the devotee is always situated in knowledge and never merges or never tries to merge. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32 says, I'll read the Sanskrit, it's a very important verse, Yen ye ravandakshavi muktamaninas, tvayasta bhavad avashuddha buddhaya, aruya krichrena parampadam tata, patantyado nadrata yushmad angrayaha. O Lord, the intelligence of those who think themselves liberated, but who have no devotion, is impure. Even though they rise to the highest point of liberation by dint of severe penances and austerities, they're sure to fall down again into material existence, for they do not take shelter at your lotus feet. In the Bhagavatam, there's a translation, and it's the same idea very much, but it says that they fall down again because they have no regard for your lotus feet. They don't care for the lotus feet of the Lord. And therefore, of course, they don't take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So there's some evidence of the same point in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 11. Avajananti mamudha manishim tanamasritam parambhava majananto mama bhuta maheshvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. So the thing is, when these rascals see Krishna sometimes acting as a human, they deride him. They don't know his parambhavam, or his supreme nature. So, and then they're further described in the next verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 12. Mogasha mogakarmano mogajnana vichetasa rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruit of activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Yes, because they don't know that his body is not material. And they don't know that he's non-different from his body. So they can't imagine he could be the origin of everything. Therefore they're described as mogasha. They're baffled in their hopes. They have hopes of merging and like that in personal realization. But they're baffled in that because they disrespect and don't understand and don't accept the spiritual form of the Lord. So Prabhupada says, whatever they want for the future will be baffled. And even if they do some devotional service, still they're mogasha, because ultimately they want to use that devotional service to help them merge. So fourth paragraph, this is a big purport. So anyway, the karmis who want to go to heaven by devotional service will also be frustrated because that's not the result of devotional service. But at least they're given the chance to do devotional service and become purified to some degree. So Bhagavatam 1.2.17 says, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantakstohya Bhadrani, Vidunoti Saritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So the fifth paragraph of this purport, it is definitely a substantial purport. So unless that dirt in the heart is cleansed away, there's no chance of becoming a pure devotee. Therefore, the term sudurlabha is used in this particular verse. Sudurlabha means very rarely found. Yes, not just among hundreds and thousands, but among millions of liberated souls. A pure devotee is hardly ever found. So therefore the words Kotishvapi are used here. And Madhvacharya gives the following quotations from the Tantra Bhagavat. Yes, I will not read the Sanskrit. There's two verses. I won't read the Sanskrit, I'll just read the translations. There are 90 million demigods and 70 million sages who are all called Narayanayana, devotees of Lord Narayan. Among them, only a few are called Narayana Parayana. The difference between the Siddhas and Narayana Parayanas is that direct devotees are called Narayana Parayanas, whereas those who perform various types of mystic yoga are called Siddhas. Verse 6. Vritrasura was situated in the blazing fire of battle and was an infamous, sinful demon, always engaged in giving troubles and anxieties to others. How could such a devotee become so greatly Krishna conscious? So there's a short purport here, let's just read it. It has been described that a Narayana Parayana, a pure devotee, is really found even among millions and millions of persons. Therefore Parikshit Maharaj was surprised that Vritrasura, whose purpose was to give trouble and anxiety to others, was one of these devotees, even on a battlefield. What was the reason for Vritrasura's advancement? Verse 7. My dear Lord Shukadev Goswami, although Vritrasura was a sinful demon, he showed the prowess of a most exalted Kshatriya and satisfied Lord Indra in battle. How could such a demon be a great devotee of Lord Krishna? These contradictions have caused me great doubt, and they have made me eager to hear of this from you. Right, so now the second section, from verse 8 to verse 13, Shukadev starts telling the story of King Chitraketu, who was Vritrasura in his previous life. Yes. Okay, so there's not much in the way of purports here, so I'm just going to read straight through. Verse 8. Sri Suta Goswami said, after hearing Maharaj Parikshit's very intelligent question, Shukadev Goswami, the most powerful sage, began answering his disciple with great affection. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, I shall speak to you the same history I have heard from the mouths of Vyasadeva, Narada and Devala. Please listen with attention. Yeah, in other words, the story of Vritrasura is a very famous story and gets told very regularly by devotees and even very great devotees. Verse 10. O King Parikshit, in the province of Shurasena, there was a king named Chitraketu who ruled the entire earth. During his reign, the earth produced all the necessities for life. And there's a purport here. Prabhupada says the most significant statement here is that the earth was producing all necessities of life at the time of Chitraketu. And Prabhupada refers to the first verse of Vishuddhanishad, Ishavasyam idam sarvam. Everything in the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord, therefore we should only take our quotas and not touch other things which are not our quotas. So, in other words, Krishna's made the material world with everything. There's no scarcity. All necessities supplied from the earth. And when there's a good ruler, then all necessities are produced abundantly. But when there's no good ruler, there's scarcity. And this is the significance of the word Kamaduk. Yes, Kamaduk. So Bhagavatam 1:10. Is it 1:10:4? What is it? Sure. I've got the wrong number there. We'll have to correct that. Kamam Vavarsha Parajanya Sarvakama Duga Mahi. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of men in profusion. I have a feeling it's 1:10:4. So we have experience. Sometimes there's tons of rain. In South Africa, sometimes we get too much, like a couple of days ago. And sometimes there's scarcity. And we can't control the productiveness of the earth. That's under the Lord. And he may arrange that it produces sufficiently or insufficiently. But if a pious king rules, naturally there'll be regular rainfall, sufficient produce. And then there's no question of exploitation, black marketing, other corrupt dealings. Yes, so Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, simply ruling the land cannot solve man's problems unless the leader has spiritual capabilities. He must be like Maharaj Yudhisthira, Parikshit Maharaj, or Ramachandra. Then all the inhabitants of the land will be extremely happy. Verse 11. This Chitraketu had 10 million wives. Krishna only had 16,108. Chitraketu had 10 million. But although he was capable of producing children, he did not receive a child from any of them. By chance, all the wives were barren. All those women, 10 million, none of them had the sort of biological, physical capability of having a child. Verse 12, Chitraketu, the husband of these millions of wives, was endowed with a beautiful form, magnanimity, and youth. He was born in a high family, he had a complete education, and he was wealthy and opulent. Nevertheless, in spite of being endowed with all these assets, he was full of anxiety because he did not have a son. So Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, it seems, first he married one wife, no child came. Then a second, no child. Then a third, no child. Then a fourth, no child. And eventually 10 million and no children. Yes. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Chanakya Pandit says, Putrahinam griham shunyam. If a family man has no son, his home is no better than a desert. The king was certainly most unhappy that he could not get a son, and this is why he had married so many times. Kshatriyas especially are allowed to marry more than one wife, and this king did so. Nevertheless, he had no issue. Verse 13. His queens all had beautiful faces and attractive eyes. Yet neither his opulences, his hundreds and thousands of queens, nor the lands of which he was the supreme proprietor were sources of happiness for him. So devotees, we go on to the third section from verse 14 to verse 21. And it is titled, Angira Muni visits Chitraketu. And most of the verses have no purports. There's two which have very like one sentence purports. And there's one which has a shortish purport. So we're just going to read through. So first of all, verse 14. Once upon a time when the powerful sage named Angira was traveling all over the universe without engagement, by his sweet will, he came to the palace of King Chitraketu. 15. Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship. He offered drinking water and eatables, and in this way performed his duty as a host to a great guest. When the rishi was seated very comfortably, the king, restraining his mind and senses, sat on the ground at the side of the rishi's feet. Verse 16. O King Parikshit, when Chitraketu, bent low in humility, was seated at the lotus feet of the great sage, the sage congratulated him for his humility and hospitality. The sage addressed him in the following words. Verse 17. The great sage Angira said, My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements. His instructor, Swami or Guru. His ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. So there is a short purport here. Sridhar Swami comments in his Bhagavatam commentary, a king is not alone. He first has his spiritual master, the supreme guide. Then come his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. If these 7 are properly maintained, the king is happy. First spiritual master, his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. Looks like 8, but anyway, yeah. So Bhagavad Gita explains the soul is within the covering of Mahatattva, ego and Panchatanmatra, the 5 objects of sense gratification. So when these 7 are in order, there's a mood of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king is happy. Therefore, Angira inquired about the king's health and the good fortune of his 7 associates. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, when we inquire from a friend whether everything is well, we're concerned not only with his personal self, but also with his family, his source of income, and his assistants or servants. All of them must be well, and then a person can be happy. 18. O King, O Lord of humanity, when a king directly depends on his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they are also happy. And there's a short purport. Let us just read it. The actual happiness of a king and his dependents is described in this verse. A king should not simply give orders to his dependents because he is supreme. Sometimes he must follow their instructions. Similarly, the dependents should depend on the king. This mutual dependence will make everyone happy. Verse 19. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of your ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents? So Prabhupada makes same point actually, as in the previous purport just now. The master or king and his subordinates should be interdependent. Through cooperation, both of them can be happy. Verse 20. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and government officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance. And what to speak of lesser servants? So again, there's very short purport. Angira Rishi asked the king whether his mind was also under control. This is most essential for happiness. Verse 21. O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem not to have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. Well, what shall we do? I think we'll actually stop here and we'll carry on from here tomorrow, from this point. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.